Welcome. All right, there we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the City of Daytona Beach City Commission Budget Highlights Workshop. It is Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. Delighted to have each of you with us. At this time, we will turn the meeting over to our city manager and allow him to frame the remainder of the meeting.
Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, wanted to give you a budget highlights, a really high-level understanding. We will be finalizing our budget documents and during our agenda briefings, and also based on comments we hear from you all tonight, we'll be bringing those back as well. But wanted to share some of the major highlights of the budget process, and also then to talk about some of the coronavirus, where we are and where we're going based on some of the conversations we've had, and for you all to give us more direction based on how we should spend the additional 7.5. One of the things that we focus on this budget year is really some of the capital projects, deferred maintenance that we've been dealing with. Some of our major capital projects, our personnel. You asked about for police and fire, so we looked at our personnel matters and also how we can increase some staffing levels in certain areas like code enforcement, maintenance for landscaping, trash, and things of that nature. So staff has worked very hard to bring those things in. When I first got here, I asked Mr. Holmes to do a facilities assessment of all. And him and his staff did that, and we have that document as well. So we've inputted a lot of capital funds in our for infrastructure in the budget. So I'm going to allow for Fred to present some slides, and then we'll bring up Mr. Driscoll to talk about the some of our COVID stuff. And at any time, the clerk and myself will also be taking notes. So if you share some notes tonight, that we will put them in a memo and send them back out, but also and improve our budget items if there are some changes that you all want.
The budget officer.
Fred, before you start, Mayor and City Commission, I believe Commissioner Reed is appearing virtually. Have we?
Yeah,
okay.
She's on the phone.
All right, very good. We will need to provide for her attendance in that virtual manner by motion and based on exceptional circumstances, which she may be able to state.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do you wish to state your circumstance? No, not required for me, but
Yes, sir. I'm away, and I did not want to omit my duty as a commissioner by not being there, so I'm making arrangements to still participate.
all right, glad to have you. And we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Fred Coulter, the budget officer. I first wanted to talk about what we did 2 weeks ago for a moment. This is just a summary of what happened then. It's an announcement about the operating millage rate. You'll notice that it has been dropping for the last 10 years. We've gone from over 7 mils down to about 5.5, so we have been dropping the millage rate. The general obligation debt rate automatically drops because as the property values go up, and since the payments are roughly equal, so we have had a rather substantial drop over the last 10 years in the general obligation millage rate debt. Increase in taxable value of our existing construction. And we've had a very nice growth over the last 10 years. We've actually had it longer than that, but too many bars, it gets too confusing. So deferred maintenance of city assets, we're beginning to address them. There's far more that needs to be done. This is a good first step. We're addressing public safety personnel shortages that we want more people, and we're also addressing increased staffing levels in general, and we're doing some capital spending. So let's go look at those in more detail. For deferred maintenance, we have been underfunding, I think is a nice way of saying it, the maintenance of our existing facilities. And so, based upon all of Andy's work, the most important areas we thought we should address first were roofs and air conditioners. So we have in this year's budget $1 million to address roofing needs on city buildings and another $1.1 million to address air conditioning needs. As you've been in the building the last month, you'll have noticed that we have air conditioning needs. So there is a plan. This is the first step in the plan. It will take multiple years for details as to how many years. You'll have to talk to Andy. Once we get caught up, we're still going to have to maintain these projects. We do not want our buildings slowly decaying, as some of them have in the past. So that's the first thing we're doing in the budget. The City Commission has asked us to address public safety. And so we've done several things, not just coming up, but in the past, that are going to be addressing public safety. We reduced vesting for their pension plan from 25 to 20 years to make us a more attractive place to work. Well, that was already included in last year's budget, so that includes it on the future. We've increased pay for officers. In mid of this year, a couple months ago, we increased pay for all the public safety officers, both in the police and the fire department. In addition, next year, as part of the union contract, they're getting a 3% increase in the beginning of October and another 4% at the beginning of April. We're also adding some positions for fire and police in the next year's budget. The total increase between the adopted budget last year and the proposed budget this year, just of salaries alone, no benefits, nothing else, is $3.9 million increase. That's 16% increase in budgeted salaries in 1 year, just for fire and police. So we're hoping that will make us a more attractive place to work, which will address many issues that we're having right now. They're not the only place that we're adding bodies. We're also adding a total of 28 FTEs. Scattered amongst the different departments. City manager's office is 1, development services have 3, business enterprise management has 1, the police department has 2 positions added, public works has 12 positions added, utilities has 2, and the fire department has 7, and these are in the budget. And the last thing we're doing is we're spending a lot of money on capital. Water and sewer projects are the largest. Most of that is generated directly from the revenues. They're doing $7.8 million of additional money for capital spending. We've got $4 million in the budget for roads and sidewalks. This is the 3rd year of the mayor's initiative to add money to roads and sidewalks. The CRA has $3.8 million in capital projects. We've got $1.7 million for 11 heavy vehicles. We have many of our vehicles, not many, but some of our vehicles are getting very, very old, and so we're addressing the needs of replacing 11 heavy vehicles at $1.7 million. Police vehicles and tasers, this is replacing the cars on the streets. This is a taser contract that y'all agreed to, is $1.2 million next year. The stormwater projects is increasing by $868,000. We've got minor equipment and other vehicles of about $750,000. We have 2 incentive agreements. They show up as projects, Capital One, and things like, Daytona One, and things like that for $675,000. We're putting in over $500,000 of stadium projects in the budget, ceiling of the stadium and bleachers and things like that. And we're remodeling a fire station for $300,000. And that's the very high-level look at what we have going on in the budget.
Fire station?
3? Yeah.
3. Thanks.
Thinking 5, but it's been a while, and Drew would know that far better than I do.
Real quick, also, Commissioners, just want to say within reference to the personnel, many of the things you all have been talking about in reference to code enforcement and the maintenance of our of parks, facilities and stuff, we've tried to put those additional personnel in the budget, and we will be looking at how we utilized the additional staff members in our code enforcement once we have our code staff meetings and discuss, because some of the things people have been talking about, the need for more code staff in more identified areas of the city. So when you look at some of these new personnel matters, request with the maintenance workers and public works. We want to continue to increase our work that we're doing in certain locations throughout the city in regards to our cleanliness, maintaining our park space, our facilities. I know that Ms. Goodman, Mr. Willis, and Mr. Holmes, they've been talking about how we can do that, and also meeting with Captain Lee and Denzo and the police chief about how do we identify certain things from a code enforcement perspective, and what our needs are going to be as we continue to look at ADUs and vacation rentals and all of that. We're going to need some of those things. And we just wanted to share these highlighted items with you all, but wanted to set individual meetings I know Mr. Strickland, he met with Fred earlier to go over certain items, but for other commissioners to go one-on-one with in line items on things that you have concerns with. Evidently he read through his book faster than I read through mine, because he and met with them, but this is just the high level of what the capital projects are. We pretty much have not increased normal items in the agenda, but these are some of the increases, and our staff members are here. If you wanted to know what type of water and sewer projects we have, I know staff can communicate those here tonight as well if necessary.
I'd like to know that Public Works, 12 staff persons, what's the gist of that? What will they be doing? It seems like a lot.
Andy Holmes, Public Works. That's a good question. The question was, where are the 12 employees that Public Works is increasing? Give you a quick rundown. There are several of them represent a conversion from casual labor to full-time for litter pickup. What we found over the last year or so, we got additional litter pickup crews approved. Mr. Feudicher approved those a year or so ago. But it's difficult to hire. It's a very tight labor market, and it's hard to hire those people as casuals. What we have found is there's some interest in coming to work for us if it's a permanent full-time position. And so in order to get that work done, we asked to convert those employees to permanent full-time. And we don't think the litter problem away, so we think that probably is a prudent move to do that. So that's about 4 of those positions.
Let me ask you a question on that.
Yes, sir.
In the conversion, does it equate financially in any way? Is it adverse to the city?
There's some increase in cost, but there's also, casuals are part-time employees, so it creates some scheduling challenges for you, especially around events and things. And so a permanent full-time employee is much easier to schedule because we're not limited to the 30 hours or 32 hours a week. And so there's some benefits to be gained along with the increase in cost.
Okay.
So, and right now, since we can't hire the casuals, we're running people on overtime, which is actually more expensive than a full-time employee. So we expect it'll be revenue neutral in the end. Yes, ma'am.
So I know that in Zone 3 we have issues of trash, people dumping, et cetera, et cetera. So could you just describe to us what their duties would be? Because we do have Waste Pro, right?
We do have Waste Pro. Waste Pro is primarily for the scheduled garbage collection, trash collection, including bulk trash and yard waste. This is more, the litter pickup crews are more for just people throwing stuff out the window of their car, and it ends up everywhere. It's a difficult problem. It doesn't reflect well in our city, and I think the more we can do to pick up that litter and get it off the streets quickly, the better off we're all going to be. So.
And you're going to elaborate on the other?
Yeah, be glad to. There's an additional grounds crew that will focus on the leisure services facilities, the cultural, the community centers, Midtown Cultural Center, and others. That will keep those facilities dressed up just a little bit better than staffing. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about this. Do you have a schedule? Because we're always emailing, but do we have a schedule of where the maintenance is done Is it zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 5 at different times of the month? Like, what, is there a schedule that exists
It's
for that?
what we've done, and we've had our grounds manager has revamped over the last 3.5 years or so, has placed the employees in zones for grounds maintenance. And what that has done, and it's different zones than the commission zones. I think we have 4 or 5 zones for maintenance. What it's done is it's reduced the amount of time that those employees have to drive around town and increase the amount of time they can actually do work in the parks and grounds. And so some of the benefits that we've seen, a lot of the benefits we've seen in the quality of our grounds maintenance has been because of that, because the employees get to spend more time out there actually doing the work than traveling between sites. So yes, there is a schedule. The same employees work in the same zones month after month. They develop kind of some ownership of those areas and pride in their work, and it really is starting to have a beneficial effect.
It is.
So asked for an additional plumber. We have 1 plumber on staff right now in the city. So one of these positions is an additional plumber that will be able to help with, obviously, all of our deferred maintenance on facilities and buildings, which is a real need here. There's also some, let me see, I've got the list. An asphalt inspector. We're doing about $3 million in asphalt work now annually, and we want to make sure that that asphalt is placed in a manner that is consistent with the standards for that kind of work. So that's a necessary position. We can contract it out. Contracting it out is in excess of $100 an hour, and so we can do that in-house for a much lower rate. We expect that to be kind of a revenue neutral or a revenue beneficial position. It will actually save us money over the long term. For a city surveyor, there again, we contract all of that out now, all the development review of plats. That city surveyor can do that and reduce the amount of money that we're spending on contracts and increase our response time and give better service to our community. Also asked for an AutoCAD specialist to support that position. And that's somebody who would draw survey documents and plans for us in-house, again, enabling us to respond faster and better and cheaper than we can do it by consulting everything. Consultants right now are very busy, like everybody else that's in business, it seems like, and it's very difficult to get work turned around when you have to consult it out. I think that pretty much covers the 12 positions that we've asked for.
Okay, thank you. In the fire department, there's 7. Elaborate on those 7 people. Fred, while he's coming, think about where we are in terms of overall staffing from now to where we were 10, 12 years ago. If you know those numbers, but I'll let him answer now.
Don't have them off the top of my head.
Certainly get a comparison chart.
Okay, and the reason that I want to have that is I want us to understand that pre-recession is different. We went through a very tight, I was on the commission time when we contracted our city staff. So some of these jobs, they didn't go away. We tried to defer them in different sorts of ways and do them in ways that might have been cheaper, but it's not always cheaper, but at any rate, that's another matter. Go ahead, sir.
Drew Driscoll, Deputy City Manager and Fire Chief. The mayor is correct. In 2007, the fire department had 126 full-time employees, and in 2009, we reduced down to 103. The job didn't go away. We just shouldered more burden. Currently today, since the recession, we're up to 114, still nowhere near our high when we opened station number 7. So the 7 indicated here are 6 firefighters with the intention of putting an additional rescue truck on the street that we once previously had. If you may recall from some of our annual reports, we did a call reduction initiative where we tried to right-size the amount of calls that we are going to. Well, since that initiative has taken place, with the growth, we've now eaten through any of those savings that we captured, and we're back to the starting point of where we were when those started. So really it's a trying to take on the burden of the increased governmental demand for services. And I'm sorry, and the one additional spot is for an in-house records clerk that we previously had.
Did you have a question? All right. Thank you, Drew.
And we'll make sure to provide a comparison electronically to you all.
That's sort of important so that we understand why, I know these jobs aren't just coming out of the blue. I do not realize that, but I also want us to be cognizant of a lot of things as it relates to our residents. And go ahead, do you have something?
No, I have nothing else other than, sorry, let's make the clerk happy. No, I have nothing other than answering any other questions you have or writing down questions I don't have answers for.
And as I stated, if you have, for your agenda prep, if you have any particular questions you want us to bring to the table, just get with me and we'll make sure to bring those to the table at our next agenda prep before we have our first budget hearing.
Okay. This has not been the ideal way for a budget to be developed. In fact, it's been really bad. You didn't give any objective about what was important to you. And you being us, the commission, really this is our chief responsibility. Staff, to them, they have to do a job and they have to put forth a budget, execute one. But they're always going to give you a budget that they can execute. But if you don't give any description of what's important to you, if we don't. So here's one issue that I have, and this is important and it's been important. To see, and I'm proud of the fact that we've had $4 million in the budget the last 2 or 3 years on roads. But I have wanted that budget to incrementally increase. Doesn't have to be by the percentage of the rest of the budget, but by some percentage, because we cannot, to the days of $2 million, which was half of what we needed. And the only way to ensure that, other than making it a budgetary requirement, is that when we get ready to do the budget, we say that this is what we need in the budget. And residents have been very pleased with having their roads paved, and I think you all will agree with that. It's been one of the most positive comments about from the city, period, aside from getting panhandlers off the streets. So that was what I would have brought to the table. That was the number one priority that I would have brought to the table. We didn't mention in this discussion about pay raises for staff. Is that a part of this budget? Is that, I thought it was in something I read.
In accordance to the way that we've been doing it traditionally, staff has been mirroring the union contracts. So as the unions get the 3 and the 4, staff has been getting the 3 and the 4. Okay. And
see, this is a part of why we need to have a budgetary meeting, because we're in a season when I don't have a problem with staff getting a raise, but we're in a season when you are giving police officers are not simply receiving a raise, they're receiving a market adjustment, which is different. Adjustment is in part because the market makes it such that they can't do their job, meaning the chief and his staff, by recruiting people. So you had to adjust their pay in order to adjust to the rest of the market. Now, I think Andy illustrated an important point, that that's not isolated to the police department. but it's not necessarily as elevated of an issue as the police department is. So the way that I looked at the challenge for the police department was that it wasn't just that we wanted to do a raise, because we had just done a increase for the police, or at least, we just come to terms that we agreed to with them, and we were not under an obligation, but in order for them to be able to meet the job requirements and hire people, we had to give that. So it's not the same, and so I don't think that we should necessarily have the same rate increase that the police have, unless, as he illustrated, and he made an adjustment by hiring people full-time so that they would be able to have so the job would be more enticing. Do you all understand, follow what I'm saying? And that's not to say that I don't think staff should have a raise. But when you talk about equity, and I talked about this in a commission meeting a while back, it is not giving everybody the same thing. It's just simply not. It's doing what has to be done so that the job for the residents can be done. Not necessarily equity to the residents if you give the same raise to the staff. And so in my opinion, that has to, this budget doesn't have to reflect what we've always done. And that's something that we should have, again, been able to discuss so that we were able to read that out so the staff could understand whether we agreed or not. This is my perception. I'm not saying that's everybody's
So
perception.
in previous years, the way that we operated was we get together, we get a list, we get a chart, we say this matters to me, these are my goals, my plans, etc. We didn't do that this time, correct? Exactly. And that impacts everything that's going on now. So I was thinking that when we met for our strategic visionary planning session, that we'd be doing some of that also. Is there still time for that?
No, absolutely not. And just not. And that's no fault. He was trying to do something, I think, unique, and would have given us a chance to really go deep into what we need to go into in order in order to hear from us. And I believe that that's the way it should be done. I don't believe we should go into, budget meetings in isolation with the manager. It should be transparent to the community, and everyone should know what we think, what we feel, what's our priorities, and then we should say as a group whether we agree and kind of come to terms. So,
if I could ask from Mr. Sexton's, the understanding that our union contracts, because that's if you all recall last year internally staff, I had questions because there are 2 raises that are given to employees based on previous agreements. Could you explain the process of how did we get to the point where how many more years do we have on those contracts with the raises that have the percentages twice a year?
Sure. Jim Sexton, Human Resources Director. We collectively bargained with our 4 units, CFPBA that represents police and sergeants, FOP that represents lieutenants, IAFF that represents all sworn firefighters except for battalion chief and up, and our AFSCME unit, which is our general blue collar, some white collar union that represents most of the other employees. We entered into 2-year collective bargaining agreements last year. So this past October of 2021, we entered into a collective bargaining agreement where we're going to give 3% in October and 4% in April for the 2-year collective bargaining agreement. So what you're seeing in this year's budget is just the 2nd year of the agreement that we have already collectively bargained. This next February, March, April, we'll start bargaining for the next successor agreement. At that point, if we want to negotiate however the direction from this board is, that's certainly what we'll do. And you're right, Mayor. So what happened was we just did a market adjustment to try to better recruit and retain our public safety, police, and fire, right? And that was a market adjustment to try to put a splash. I think you even described that as we're making a splash. We want to be able to recruit people, and I can tell you successfully the applications are rolling in. Like our training staff, our background staff, our backlog, like we're just trying to get through them. Yes, ma'am?
How have the other cities responded since we went up? It seemed as though we went up, they went up, we went up. So how are they responding?
They haven't gone up yet, but obviously they're in the works, right? They're all kind of doing the same thing. It's like, look what Daytona Beach did. Yeah, for sure, right? And that's going to be the vicious cycle that happens all the time. And to clarify one point that Andy made, when we were filling our litter pickup, if you will, we did try it with casual employees, and we pay casual employees $13 an hour, and they can't work more than 30 hours a week. So by making them full-time, it gets them up into a minimum range of $15 an hour, and they have the benefits. So we think, as Andy explained, we'll have, better opportunity to fill those spots with full-time people and then be able to schedule them accordingly.
And then with the benefits, what does that really equate to? What's benefits?
It's $56,000 for a maintenance worker one, starting at $31,200, which is the $15 an hour plus benefits. The cost on that is $56,000 and some change. Now that's FRS. That's all the goodies that you get as being a city employee.
But so to get back to the original point, so we are in a contract
Yes.
with our unions. The
all four units, yes,
why
sir.
we are putting those two components. But next year, if we make a decision that it is, most cities are not giving
3 and 4.
3 and 4 colas anywhere.
That's right.
In the state. So if that is part of our discussion, that needs to be part of our discussion because that's not happening. But there was a contract you all negotiated 2 years ago to say we're going to give 3 and 4%.
And it's actually our 4th year. We had the previous 2-year bargaining agreement. One, we went up to the $15 an hour minimum, if you recall that. So we bumped everybody up to the 15, and the employees got 3 and 4% for that 2-year collective bargaining agreement. Now we're in the second 2-year agreement of giving 3 and 4. So we were doing that recognizing from 06 through 12, the employees weren't getting raises, right? So we were trying to make that up. And I think even the bargaining units try to put them on notice, not necessarily the public safety, because it is what it is. We got to maintain that. But I think my unit understands that 7% is not sustainable, right, for future. And this is anywhere from, maintenance workers to treatment plant operators, right? It's the guys that maintain our park, the people that maintain our parks, and the people that make our drinking water, right? So there's some equity within that. So maybe even within the ranks of our collective bargaining agreement, we say, okay, certain employees get X and other employees get Y. Like, we can negotiate all those things. Just because you're in the unit doesn't mean, if the treatment plant operator's getting 5%, that doesn't mean the maintenance worker one should get 5%, right? We got to figure out market where we have to put our resources in order to maintain those essential services.
How do you, I have to ask, how do you value, how is that, is there a scale for that at all? How do you value one person's contribution over another? I'm curious.
Well, so it's easier when we say public safety, right? The life and safety of our citizens and residents. So we have paramedics and firefighters and police officers and detectives and all those folks in public safety. Then we have the critical mission of drinking water, right? When we turn on our water fountains, we expect nice, clean, tasty water to come. So those are essential functions. So you start trying to narrow that field down, and although beautification and quality of life things matter, I think life and public safety and health, which utilities could fall under that as well. Traffic, if traffic signals are bad, roads are bad, we have accidents, so those are essential. So I think that's why, even though I've heard this board, at some point, the pie gets sliced up and all of a sudden leisure gets a little less, and some of these other quality of life type functions get a little bit less because we're trying to maintain the true critical missions of what a government should provide its citizens.
How many total employees do we have right now?
This, with the 28 that we have budgeted this year, we are going to 975. So we had 947 last fiscal year. Add the 28, we're going to go to 975. And I can tell you this, I started here 10 years ago, we were at 758, something like that. So over the past 10 years, we've been chipping away post-recession, trying to bring back that,
Started how many do we have?
When I started, 758, 759, somewhere in there, full-time employees.
And you said how many?
10 years ago.
How many we have now?
assuming these stay in, 927. We currently have 947 budgeted positions. 945. Correct. And then if we add the 28, that'll bring us to 975. I'm sorry, it's 947.
In the budget book that you were given,
Sorry.
in the budget book that you were given 2 weeks ago, there was a breakdown of these positions by department.
Be happy to answer any other questions.
There was something stated, but I have forgotten what my response was to it. I think it was in response to what her question was.
Okay.
A large part of it is it's about what the market mandates for each individual job also is. We have to stay competitive, no matter what the job is, especially in the jobs that he described. It starts with essential workers. Whatever is essential to the maintenance of the city, that's the number one priority, so we got to stay competitive. And then we try to stay competitive so we can hire qualified people across the board. And that's why I don't believe in unilateral pay raises across the board for everybody, because every job is not, doesn't have this, it's harder to fill some jobs than others. Doesn't mean everybody's not valuable.
Certainly.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Are we moving to, go ahead.
All right, next we're going to have, and if these are recommendations, that we have to, the money doesn't have to be spent tomorrow, so if you all want to have another meeting reference to the COVID stuff, we can have another workshop, but I do think we have a list of proposals and plans, so I'll let Drew have, we have about 10 minutes, and if we have to share, remember the money doesn't have to spend tomorrow.
Again, Drew Driscoll, Deputy City Manager and Fire Chief. I'm going to try to get moving forward as quickly as possible. To move forward, last year you adopted the 2021 programming plan of our $7.5 million we've received from the U.S. Treasury. These are the programs that were based on 3 community workshops, 2 feedback sessions, 2 commission workshops, and is currently in progress. To simplify that long list into categories so you can see where the money has been spent thus far from the 2021 programming plan. Community enhancement projects that could be actual physical products such as the acquisition of LPGA land for a future park, the youth and education support such as our contributions to the area schools and athletic teams. Not-for-profit community services. We've really reached out to our community services and not-for-profits with the donations that we've brought forward to previous commission meetings. Here on the bottom, we still have $1.3 million in undedicated zone funds that are not spoken to projects yet. And I should reiterate, it's not that the thought behind how these monies would be spent hasn't taken place. It's just that we haven't encumbered the money because we don't have a full cost estimate, whether it was a park, a dog park, a beautification effort, or a sign. We just have not encumbered that money yet. This is a combination of what you just saw from the commission zone funds and that first page. As you can see, we added in affordable housing, development and preservation, and small business direct and indirect support. I say direct and indirect because one of the components we can't capture is the indirect out of each dollar spent. So oftentimes a lot of these projects have gone to local vendors, and those local vendors employ local citizens who go to local grocery stores, local restaurants. So as a rhetorical question, I wonder how many times over this dollar has been spent within our community, further infusing the economy.
And of course, this is again the 1.3 unencumbered right now.
Slide quickly.
Yep.
Community enhancement projects, again, what does that mean?
Items that are physical products, such as the land that we acquired for the future LPGA park.
Okay.
Came up with a playground or something like that, that would go into that category. One of the concerns, and I'm walking through all my bullet points, but no worries. One of the concerns was to make sure that we're having a full, diverse, holistic impact on our community. So I've taken the time to put pinpoints of our projects thus far and some of the proposed onto this. These ones that you see here in blue, those are grant projects. Once those grants start to unfold for affordable housing and things along those lines, you'll start to see more pinpoints throughout the city. Similar to what you see in the yellow and orange, those are a roofing grant process that's gone through. To date, in fact, we have 30 roofs completed and 20 have approved POs and just waiting on the roofing material. So you can see, and then the light green are some of the proposed projects we're going to go over. As you can see, we're holistically engaging with the city and making sure those impacts are felt throughout the community. Yes, ma'am.
What are the check marks and the red check marks?
The red check marks, those are projects that have already been funded and completed. Some of the stars are ones that have been set aside but not completed yet.
Okay.
This is the 2022 programming plan that is being proposed tonight by staff. Again, we wanted to continue based on those community feedback sessions and the direction that we've received from Commission to work towards the preservation of housing within our community. So you'll see an affordable housing rehabilitation grant, a code compliant assistance grant, and a residential beautification grant. Next, we propose to again fund the zone-specific commission funds and mayor's fund. We find that zone-specific, you have your ear and finger on the pulse of your constituents in your zone. Your zone's needs differ throughout the city. So as the speaker for those people, we find that you could tell us where the dollars need to be spent in your community, and I just think that we've already seen a lot of success from that program. As the community recovers, the city also, as I alluded to at the last meeting, we spent tens of millions of dollars on payroll to send people at home, and from that, we recovered $10 million from the federal government. Some of the projects that have been on the plate for some time is Jackie Robinson Ballpark renovation. This $2.5 million would serve as an ECHO extraordinary grant match to meet the needs of Jackie Robinson, which we'll go over in a moment. The LPGA Community Park Acceleration Fund, just to start funding the design, because that's a long process and an expensive process. It's just seed money to help bring this project forward. It won't build the first swing set in there, just design. The Daytona Stadium Rehabilitation Project. Our 1988 stadium is aged and weathered, and it is undergone some renovation, but it still needs much more. And then, as we spoke to, was the Josie Roger Historic Renovation Grant that we passed last meeting or the previous meeting in partnership with the Riverfront Esplanade Foundation. At the mayor's direction, we tried to look where we could claw out money from the existing budget. We pulled out $243,000 of that $600, and so this $243 is currently unassigned, waiting for your direction. To hurry up because we have 10 minutes, I'd like to invite Ken Thomas to discuss the first three projects, programs.
Well, that $2.5 million, so you're saying that it would cost us $2.5 million to renovate, and then we're going to ask the county for a match of that?
Yes.
So it's $5 million, and we'll be able to take the the stadium?
For this first portion, that is what we're proposing, yes, sir.
And this is based on the Major League Baseball recommendation with the letter that was sent by Mr. Chisholm.
Yes, we currently had a resolution of support to preserve professional baseball in Daytona Beach as a community asset. Part of that preservation was to meet the MLB standards. It is something that needs to be worked on if we wish to maintain baseball. And utilizing, I hate to say free, because it's not my belief system, but our great-grandkids' money, to utilize the federal money coming to us to act as a grant match to maximize our dollar, that is what is being proposed here.
And Thomas Reed, Development Director. As you indicated, we're going to have 3 new programs. And the first program we're going to have will be the housing rehab program. $5,000 is dedicated per person, per household. The funding will assist residents to repair any major components in the home, such as HVAC, electrical, plumbing, any structural improvements that they need to make. A grant wouldn't exceed $5,000. The second one is our code compliance assistance program. The code compliance residents to come into compliance with any of our code violations, such as broken windows, tall weeds and grass, painting, driveways, siding, handicap accessibility, and we're going to allow $5,000 per household for that one. And the last one is a beautification grant, $1,000 per household. Beautification grant will focus on new landscaping, increasing the aesthetics of the individual's home and beautification. Any questions?
Yes. So we have right now, so I'm clear, we have people who've applied online for various grant programs already. Do they go to the top of the list and then anybody new starts at the bottom, or is this brand new, fresh, you can apply to this and you go to the top of the list, or are we working from an existing list? How is that working?
Well, in housing rehab and the others, they will go on our list. So we have people already, like the roofing list. We have 200 people on the list already.
So if we have,
That's why we need to put more money in it.
so if we have 200 on the list already with the roofs costing, we're going to run through that right away.
Well, we hope so, all based on if we can get those applications out. The roofing is 200. We have 300 people on the housing repair list. That's an even greater list.
So, go ahead.
Actually, the roofing, I think we're gonna need more on.
We got the,
A lot of people get dropped from insurance.
You're absolutely right.
And they are having to go to Citizen, which is a federal, and Citizen's not prepared for all this that's happening right now. And these people cannot get insurance at all.
Right. You're absolutely right. And our roofing jobs right now, they're average between $16,000, $17,000, $18,000, $19,000. 1,200 square feet house.
Yeah, legislative needs to fix what's happening.
Yeah.
How much is in the budget for that?
Roofing, well, the housing rehab, we have $600,000.
In addition to what currently exists.
So what do we have currently that we already have? This is in addition to what you already have in your budgets.
We'd say it's nearly spoken for. As we said, we had 236 names on the list, 30 have done, 20 are waiting to be done. I think we'll eat that original $1 million that we originally pointed out here at the top. For the roofing grant, because of the great need to try and people and give them healthy living, these two were merged in to help support the roofing effort. So that's a $1.5 million that we have now, just for roofs.
Are we seeing a lot of more roofing permits and permit license right now? You guys have the insurance?
Seen a lot more what type of permits? I'm sorry, excuse me.
For roofing, are we seeing a lot of permits right now?
No, it's been staying steady.
but you mean in terms of that program, where they've already done 30, right?
We've done 30 and we have 20 POs already approved.
Yeah, so there's a need.
Yeah.
You know, it just.
And right now, it definitely is.
Yeah.
And it's a supplement to what Ken's team receives via CDBG and the other federal funds.
So, I mean, we can't really advertise it because it's already spoken for, is my point, right? You already have the people who applied for it, they're already on a list. These funds are just going to go to cover what we already have. Is that right?
We're still taking applications.
Who will then go on the bottom of the list?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, how long do you think it'll take to get there? You have 200 people on the list, right?
Right. And some of those folks may fall off. They may have gotten their repairs done. So, you know, as the applications come up, we process them. So right now, I couldn't tell you how many we could do this year coming up.
So you've got 200 people on the roofing list. Okay, and 300 on the house repair. If you did all of those people, how much money is that?
The home repair, you average about $10,000.
Per house?
10 to 15,000 per house. Now, this list is more than 2 years old because we have a CDBG housing rehab program. So those 300 are people who were picking off of our CDBG application, our CDBG waiting list.
And so are there more people who are needing big, huge items done or more people needing little items done?
Well, most of it has been roofing and HVAC and some electrical upgrades. But most roofing, HVAC is a big one too as well.
We are at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to say yes. Understanding this, I understand the need personally for the $2.5 million. But we also have to remember we have CRAs that have a responsibility to help with that stadium. $2.5 million out of ARCA funds is, in my opinion, a lot. It's exorbitant. But I know everything that you listed is necessary. But I don't think we have to decide tonight how to do it. We need to figure out what's most important to us and what's most important in terms of how that money is spent. Conversation about it.
Could we have it outside of, not on the commission meeting?
Yeah. We need outside of another this kind of meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, sure, of course. But I would also welcome us to have conversations on the dais about COVID, those issues about COVID, because there's 100 other things, you guys, that are also important. One of them is when you think about people who are being displaced from their homes every day, who are being evicted. You know, Daytona Beach, but they're being evicted because someone sold their house that they were renting. And then they have nowhere to go. So there's just a lot of things, and that is not money that I think we should rush or feel any form of pressure to appropriate until we know it's what we believe is best. Everything else that's up there, if it's most important to the city, then we have to find a way, you know. So I have one other question. Because I don't, like we have on the agenda tonight, $11,000. Whose was that?
$11,000.
For ARCA?
That's Commissioner Reed.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
I'd like to know the name so we know, I would like to know which zone it's coming from. And I just wanted to ask Commissioner Traeger, because probably you and I might be the ones that have spent the least. But if you know anything about me, I've got accounted for it. It just ain't been spoken for, so I was just wondering if you wanted to donate any to my pot.
To remind,
My pot first.
Okay. So once you go through your pot, you just let me know.
I'll see if there's anything left.
Oh, heck, I'm going to ask a little bit too. Why not?
This meeting is adjourned. I'll see you guys upstairs.
We'll see you in 5 minutes.
See you in 5 minutes, he says.